Please do not take the fact that I just tried to throw water all over my notes and my computer as indicative of the fact that I don't want to pick a TBR. Instead, take the look of fear on my face as indicative that I don't want to pick a TBR. Your girl's been mood reading for a few months now and bad habits have formed. I honestly have anxiety like somebody's trying to take my bookshelves away from me. Let's just get this done before I completely chicken out. It's Leanne and welcome to the start of a new year. Shh, we're all very, very quiet. Maybe it won't notice us and it'll just pass us by. So far I'm picturing 2022 like it has tiny dinosaur arms and we're all just under a car in the mud hiding. Trust me, that mental image is better than all of the other analogies that I almost pulled out, so we're gonna leave it there. If you are new to the channel this year, then thank you so much for stopping by to see the chaos, and for the rest of you, consider this to be a return to form, because TBRs are back, bitches. The last official TBR that I did on this channel in 2021 was in August, before I took a kind of impromptu mental health break, which I talk about a lot in this video if you're curious. During that break, I really wasn't reading very much. I really wasn't doing very much of anything because I just wasn't in the place for anything that required concentration. And then when I came back to BookTube in October and I started reading properly again. And by reading properly again, I mean I was like a very thirsty person who had been given an office water cooler and told to go crazy. And crazy I did go. It was party time up in here because I reverted to mood reading. Now, we have an interesting history with mood reading on this channel, and that what usually happens is that it works really, really great for a couple of months and then it's all downhill from there. And to carry on with the metaphors, by downhill I mean like off the edge of a cliff and into a deep, deep ravine underneath. Crash. I end up getting overwhelmed by the lack of direction in picking my books, and what happens is that I get locked onto one subject. Hello brain, how did we never work out that that was ADHD beforehand? I will never know. And that focus would mean that I would buy a lot of books that were similar to that one particular thing that I had liked, and I would read one or two of them and then I would move on to something else. And there was just book detritus behind me and no actual accomplishment in front of me. And thus many, many years ago, Stack It was born. And for a little rules recap, because it is January of a brand new year, Stack It is the game where I pick books from my physical shelves and I put them in a stack in the order that I picked them off the shelves. I have to read that stack from top to bottom without skipping any of the books. If I skip any of the books on the stack, I have to unhaul them. My logic being that if I'm not interested in them now, then when am I going to be interested in them? We did add one rule to Stack It to make it a little bit easier for my brain, because what I was finding was sometimes the book that I was most excited for was on the bottom of the stack and it felt like a really hard slog to get to it. So I can once a month flip the stack and read from the other side, but that's it. That's all of the exceptions. I have to read straight through that stack. And in 2021 we combined that with a new TBR game which you guys completely fell in love with. You went nuts for it. Most of you played along almost every month and it was just so much fun to see what my weird prompts put on your TBR and how you interpreted them. So I have listened to all of the DMs, messages and please in my comment section, and yes my friends, hashtag Year of Readathons is coming back. In case you weren't here in 2021, I decided that I wasn't going to take part in any more formal readathons for that year because I was finding that I would love making a TBR, but that the TBRs would be so long to get to the end goal for that readathon that I would never end up getting there. And some readathons that I had taken part in previously just didn't accommodate for the fact that if I'm not enjoying a book, I usually just DNF it and get rid of it. Life's too short for what? Bad books, say it with me. But I loved making TBRs from the prompt list from readathons, so what I decided to do was create my own readathon every month with brand new prompts. We had impossible letter challenges, I read your TBR moods, I let you guys completely take control of my TBR for 1 month. We had colour swatch challenges, I picked books using Taboo, and it was so much fun. I read so much at the start of the year and enjoyed myself immensely while I was doing it. And so here we are, back again with Year of Readathon prompts. So the rules of Year of Readathons are simple. I'm going to be providing you guys and myself with 5 to 6 random prompts every month, and I will be picking those books off of my physical TBR and putting them in a physical stack, and also playing along with Stack It. You guys can either play Year of Readathons on its own or combine it with Stack It to make an extra fruity game. And if you're planning on taking part, please let me know down in the comments below at the end of this video, because I am super excited to see what you make of the prompts this year. There are also 2 additional picks that I'm going to be putting on my TBR every month for this year. You guys might know that I have a Patreon. I will pop the link on the screen and down below in the description box for you if you would like to join in. We do lots of live shows and reading sprints. We watch movies together. Every month I pick a random person to get a free book that I've loved that month. And this year we are reviving our book club. Our book club is bi-monthly, so that means January and February we'll have a book, March and April we'll have a book. I'm not going to go any further through the months of the year because I will get lost and look like a fool. And obviously it's the start of January. We have picked the first book of the year together, but if you would like to join in, you have plenty of time to read that book with us. And I have also started a brand new project over on Patreon, which is my Patreon Picks pot. So if you join up to my Patreon, you can throw as many titles into the Patreon Picks pot as you like. Titles which you think are either Leanne books that I will love, or just books that you absolutely love and you would like to see me read slightly outside of my comfort zone, and I'm going to randomly pick one of those every month to be part of my TBR. And of course, if we get through all of that, I am free to mood read for the rest of the month, because it makes me feel like I'm getting away with something and it's good for me. So with all of that start of the year admin out of the way, it is now time to tell you which game we are going to be playing for January Year of Readathons. And to that end, you guys might recognise this. What does that sound like? That sounds like doom. I used this little jar in my last Year of Readathons TBR that I did last year in August. This is a jar entirely full of lyrics that you guys have submitted to me completely without context. And just for reference, if you guys want to get involved this year in my Year of Readathons TBR, I usually sneakily and without any kind of notice ask for random prompts over on Instagram. My Instagram is my Etsy store name. You can find me here. I'll pop it in the description below. But usually I just pop up on stories towards the end of the month and don't tell anybody why I need these prompts, and just get them to put random pics in a box, and then they end up in these videos. So if you want a chance to do that, that's the place to go. Given that that's where we left off, I thought it would be a nice place to start. So I'm going to pick five random lyrics out of this pot, and we are going to see which books I get. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ooh, that's a thickie. 5. And now to unwrap. Alright, so the first one that we have is from Crafty Books, and they have said, all for freedom and for pleasure, nothing ever lasts forever. I'm trying to not go for the low-hanging fruit of romance and erotica references, but that's where my head went. Next up, Erin has said, and the last thing I heard was a muttered word as he knelt above me with a rock in his fist, and has followed that up by saying, I promise I'm not a monster, I just love the song and also find that line quite funny. Sure, Erin, we believe you. Thousands would not. Okay, next we've got JJ the Book Nerd, who said, love doesn't discriminate. We do love a Hamilton reference. Love doesn't discriminate between the sinners and the saints, and it takes and it takes and it takes. And we keep singing anyway, even though we really can't, and we do it on camera quite a lot. Oh, it's Silky. We love Silky a lot. She has said, with shortness of breath, I'll try to explain the infinite and how rare and beautiful it is to even exist. Yikes. Well, I'm going to my non-fiction shelves for that one. That's all I'm saying to that one. And oh. Okay, so the thick one that I had right at the end there, is actually a two-parter. That's why it was so thick. So it says, from Books and Ballet Buns, I love that. They told me all of my cages were mental, so I calmed the rampant Taylor Swift fan inside me that just reared her ugly head. They told me all of my cages were mental, so I got wasted like all my potential, and my words shoot to kill when I'm mad. I have a lot of regrets about that. You really shouldn't, girl. Sing your truth. Okay, those are my 5 wonderful prompts for my first year of readathon. TBR. This would normally be the part where I would obnoxiously search my shelves and do a nice dance for you in the background, but as you can see, Scotland is slowly conspiring to take all of the light that we have away, so I'm just going to quickly go and do that without moving the camera, and I'll be right back. Whoa, okay, too much book enthusiasm there, Leanne. So true to the nature of Stack It, I just came and picked up one prompt from my desk and went to my shelves with it, and I didn't do it in any particular order so that I couldn't prioritise any books that I wanted to get to. It was a completely random pick. So the first one that I ended up with was Silky's With Shortness of Breath, I'll try to explain the infinite and how rare and beautiful it is to even exist. And when I read that prompt, I initially said that I had a huge instinct to go towards my non-fiction shelves. I have a few sort of like sciencey books on there that I thought might work for this, but then as soon as I saw the shelves, I was like, nope, that is the one that I am having. This is Ask Me About My Uterus by Abby Norman. You guys will probably recognise this if you were here in December, because this was in my last book haul of the year. There have been a lot of semi-memoir / historical exploration books which have come out in the last 5 years about women's pain and the way in which it is not prioritised in our medical system. And this is a subject which is close to my heart. I have a few chronic illnesses which I've talked about before here on the channel, a few of which are diagnosed, a few of which are still in the process of being properly pinned down. And for several of those conditions, getting a doctor to just acknowledge my symptoms was really, really difficult, which is exactly what this book talks about. So at the beginning of this memoir, Abby Norman is in college. She is going to the shower, carrying out a perfectly normal morning, quite happy to be young and in college and with no particular problems in her life at the time. And as she gets into the shower, she has a sudden excruciating side-splitting pain, which means that she has to crawl out of the shower, and when she stands up she is obviously terrified. This pain which happened and completely debilitated her has gone and has no explanation, but when she looks in the mirror she abruptly gets a flash of connection from her past, that she looks white and pale and sickly all of a sudden, and that was the way that her mother looked for most of her life, and that sends her on an entire journey into these symptoms which start to recur more and more frequently for Abby, and what her mum may have been going through in silence and undiagnosed. So that will be the first one going on my stack for this month. Next up, I picked up the two-parter which Books and Ballet Buns submitted, which was the Taylor Swift song, which when they told me all of my cages were mental, so I got wasted like all my potential, and my words shoot to kill when I'm mad. I have a lot of regrets about that. And that immediately sent me spinning towards my thriller shelves. I don't know about you guys, but when I read the wasted potential and all of my cages were mental, I immediately thought about somebody who was in prison, maybe for something that they didn't actually do, which, let's face it, is quite a lot of people in our justice system in this world. And so I went absolutely rifling through my shelves to try and find something which fit that ridiculously specific brief that I had in my head, and I actually managed to do it because I picked up House of Correction by Nicci French. Now, I haven't read any Nicci French books before. They are a husband and wife writing team, I believe, but mostly their books focus on one long series about one detective, and because I have mostly divorced myself from detective novels that aren't, you know, classic golden crime detective novels like Poirot and things, I just have never been compelled to pick up their work before. But this one got shoved into my hands by the wonderful Jean from Jean at Bookish Thoughts. I will link Jean down below so that she can push more books towards you too. She's very good at it. She's even more persuasive when you're standing in a bookshop and she comes up to you with very earnest eyes and goes... The line on the front says, "They all believed she killed him. How can she prove she's innocent?" I don't remember very much about the blurb on the back of this one because I am a very firm believer of if you really trust somebody's recommendations and they shove something into your hand, then you should just take it. Take it as fate and your friends wanting you to read really, really good books. So let us read the back and find it out together, shall we? She's a murderer. Well, we're off to a good start because I like those in fiction, and I specify only in fiction because I do not want to meet any in real life, thank you very much. I watch far too many true crime documentaries before bed for that. Everyone knows she killed Stuart Rees. Why else would his body be found in her garden shed? Now Tabitha is in prison awaiting trial. That day is a blur. She can't remember clearly what happened, but one thing is certain. She is not capable of murder. And there is only one person she can count on to get her out of this. Herself. We stand an independent woman. So Tabitha must fight against all the odds stacked against her. For her life. Ooh, so it's kind of an amnesia thriller, I guess. I tend to stay away from those these days because I have been burned by them in the past. But again, it is a recommendation from a very reputable source by a very famous set of authors, so I'ma give it a try. Next up, I picked up the one from Crafty Books, which is All for Freedom and for Pleasure, Nothing Ever Lasts Forever. And I immediately went down the dark academia route in my head. All for Freedom and for Pleasure feels very dark academia to me, and especially the Nothing Ever Lasts Forever feels like, you know, the end of that college experience. So I had a rake on my shelves because I actually have quite a few dark academia books right now that are unread, which is unlike me. And I found a book that I really wanted to get to at the end of last year around about spooky season, but I just didn't quite manage it, and that is Katherine House. So Katherine House is a very exclusive university that admits a very small amount of students every year. Into this university walks Inez. She has chosen to come to Katherine House because it is everything that she really wants. It is completely isolated. Once the gates are closed, the students are not allowed any contact with the outside world. All of this is very clearly stated in the rules when you do your sign-up stuff. You are not allowed any books or music which has not been assigned to you by the university. You are not allowed any contact with anybody outside of the grounds. For the entire term that you stay there, you belong to Katherine House. And Inez thinks that that sounds great. That sounds like exactly what she wants. And to be perfectly honest, in the time of the pepperoni, it's kind of exactly what I want too. It's just that I want to choose the people who are in university with me. But as time goes on in Inez's experience, she starts to feel more like a prisoner than somebody living in a sanctuary. And she starts to wonder why Katherine House chose her. I love the tiny, tiny little snapshot on the back, which very creepily says, "You are in the house and the house is in the woods. You are in the house and the house is in you." The next one that I picked up was Erin's suggestion, and she says, "And the last thing I heard was a muttered word as he knelt above me with a rock in his fist." I just can't get over the fact that Erin has prefaced this with, "I'm not a monster, honest, it's just a good song." It's okay, Erin, we all love a good murder ballad. Now for this prompt, I decided to put back on my TBR a book that I started in December, because I just can't decide about this book whether it's just not for me or whether it was like the Christmassy, December-y atmosphere and it just wasn't working for me. I'm also not entirely sure where I put it in the Christmas chaos, so I'm going to pop a picture of it here, and that book is Dowry of Blood. This is, in short, a Brides of Dracula retelling. It is about a city which is absolutely ransacked by an invading army, and in the dirt there is the almost corpse of a girl. She's almost dead. She's on the very, very brink. And in the middle of this field, a figure appears, and that figure is, of course, a vampire. And instead of allowing her to die there, he gives her the choice. She can drink his blood and become his companion, or she can stay where she is, surrounded by the corpses of her family. She chooses the semi-sensible idea of becoming his companion, and that is where the novel begins. The retelling part of it really comes in that we are getting everything from the bride's perspectives, and I do believe that there is a queer poly relationship further down the line in this novel. I didn't get past page 50 at the time. It is absolutely beautifully written, but I was feeling very, very much weighed down by words. Every single page had 4 like very flowery similes on it, and while I like a good simile, it was a lot, and there was not a lot of plot to be had in the offing, even though you are told at the very beginning that somebody from this book has been dispatched, has died in mysterious circumstances, or re-died, I guess. Undeaded died, is no longer again. But despite the rocky start that I got off to with this book, I am still kind of intrigued. I'm still interested to see where it goes, so I'm gonna finish it, or I'm gonna attempt to. We encourage DNFing here at Stack It and Year of Readathons headquarters. If it's not working for you, bye-bye. And finally, for my Year of Readathons prompt, the last one I had was from JJ the Book Nerd, and it was Love Doesn't Discriminate. And I immediately went to my shelves and ripped this book off. I was so excited. So excited. This is the Mime Order by Samantha Shannon. It is the second book in the Bone Season series. I started this series last year and became immediately completely obsessed with the first book. Completely obsessed. And I had this on my bedside table a few times in 2021 and never got around to reading it. And I think that's a combination of the fact that when I find a series that I really love, I tend to put off reading the next books in it because I know that there will be an end in sight and I don't want there to be an end in sight. And also I could feel my mental health kind of like slowly slipping downhill, and I didn't want to read a really amazing book that I was highly anticipating when I maybe wasn't in a place to properly pay attention to it. So I am very excited to put this back on my TBR and to find out what happens to Paige and her motley crew. Obviously I can't tell you much about this book because therein lies spoilers, but I can tell you a bit about the Bone Season, which is set in an alternative London. Samantha Shannon has called this like sci-fi on an epic fantasy scale, but it also has like 1 foot in horror and 1 foot in paranormal and a hand in urban fantasy and another leg somewhere else in like Victorian thief mystery novels, I guess. This series follows Paige Mahoney. She is a clairvoyant in a world which absolutely does not accept her powers. These gifts are seen as unclean, they are against the law, they are unnatural, and anybody who has clairvoyant talents has to either essentially out themselves to the government and work for the government until the government of this world, the Scion, decides that it's time to get rid of them, or they need to stay under the radar or risk being culled. And one day when on the subway during a random raid, Paige is forced to defend herself, and in doing so she kills a guard and she has to go on the run. And when she is picked up, she is not in fact taken to a Scion prison. She is taken somewhere that she could never have anticipated, and an entirely new adventure starts. It also kind of feels a little Hunger Games-y in the first book, which really worked for me. I tried to stay away from bookish comparisons, but I feel like it's almost impossible with this series because there are so many favourites of mine that it kind of touches on. It's also, I guess, a little bit X-Men-y because of some of the powers that are in here. It's great. If any of the things that I have said sound like something that you might vaguely be interested in, please pick it up and give it a try. I put it off for the longest time, mostly because people had told me that there were parts of the first book which are extremely complicated and info dumpy, but really after the first sort of like 10 pages or so, I didn't find that to be the case at all. So very happily onto the stack it goes. So that's it. This is my entire stack. If you picture that Dowry of Blood goes in here, somewhere, I forget which order. I always have to watch my videos back to figure out what order I need to read the next books in, because I never keep these in a perfect stack. They get scattered all over my house. I maybe should make an attempt at more organisation in 2022. But those are not all of the books that we are going to be reading this month, because as I mentioned at the start of the video, I have 2 new Patreon elements to my TBR every month. So for our Patreon book club for the months of January and February, the book that I am going to be reading is Jade City by Fonda Lee. If you want to join in with this on Patreon, I usually do a poll for the genre that we're going to be reading, and whatever genre wins, I pick some books, generally books that are existing somewhere on my shelf on my TBR that I think that you guys would like to read along with me. And this is the one that we ended up with in an overwhelming majority, which I was quite surprised about. Jeez, this one has been literally blurbed by everybody and their uncle. So this book has been described to me as sort of old school Hong Kong gangster films with martial arts meets new age fantasy. And I don't know what that means. I do know that this takes place in a metropolis, in a city that has been compared to China Medieval's Perdido Street Station. So I'm interested in that, because Perdido Street Station was a book that I was never ever able to get all the way through, and yet I absolutely loved the premise of it. So I'm hoping that this does something similar but better. Jade is the lifeblood of the city of Janlun, a stone that enhances a warrior's natural strength and speed. It is mined, traded and killed for, all controlled by 2 families equal in their power and ruthlessness. When a modern drug emerges that allows anyone, even foreigners, to wield jade, simmering tension between the 2 clans erupts into open war. Okay, so it also kind of sounds like The Godfather on fantasy steroids. I am not sad about this pick. I am extremely excited for this, and I think this one is the start of a trilogy which may be finished now. Ooh, a map. I do love me a city map. Like, I love me a city map a lot. Next up is my Patreon Picks project pot. So what I've done is I have a spreadsheet here in front of me of everybody's submissions for my Patreon picks so far, and I'm going to do a random number generator to find the pick that I'm going to be reading this month. Hey Google, pick a random number between 1 and 54.
32.
Okay, 32. Let's scroll through and find number 32. I have also randomised the spreadsheet, so everybody's submissions has been completely mixed up. And oh my god, we have another one from Erin! Erin, it's your absolute lucky day for influencing my TBR. Erin was also the person who picked the "I promise I'm not a monster" prompt for my lyric jar. So Erin has picked The First Day of Spring by Nancy Tucker. Oh my god, I'm so excited to read this. What are the chances? Okay, so I've asked my patrons to give me a little line at the end to say why they want me to read this. And Erin has said, I've already mentioned it to you as being a Leanne book. You've read from the author before, and she brings her experience and compassion from the mental health field to a dark subject. Plus, it has creepy little girl point of view. And you guys know how much I love a creepy child in my thrillers and mysteries. I am so excited. So I've picked this one up on my Kindle because it was the quickest way to get it to me, and it says, so that was all it took, I thought. That was all it took for me to feel like I had all the power in the world. One morning, one moment, one yellow-haired boy. It wasn't so much after all. Meet Chrissy. Chrissy is 8 and she has a secret. She has just killed a boy. Wow, is this ever a Leanne book? The feeling made her belly fizz like soda pop. Her playmates are tearful and their mothers are terrified, keeping them locked indoors. But Chrissy rules the roost. She's the best at wall walking, she knows how to get free candy, and now she has a feeling of power that she never gets at home, where food is scarce and attention scarcer. 20 years later, adult Chrissy is living in hiding under a changed name. A single mother, all she wants for her daughter is to have the childhood she herself was denied. That's why the threatening phone calls are so terrifying. People are looking for them, the past is catching up, and Chrissy fears losing the only thing in this world she cares about. Her child. Okay, how many pages is this? It's 352 pages, which is an extremely chunky thriller. I am very there for it. With that said, there are also a couple of arcs that I have here that I would like to dip my toe into in January. So the first one that I have got is Hare House by Sally Hinchcliffe, which is essentially a haunted house book, and you guys know that I'm very there for that kind of content, so I would really like to get to this one if I can. There is also In Defense of Witches by Mona Chollet. This is one of my most anticipated books of the year. It is a historical investigation into where witches have come from and how they exist now and how they are portrayed in the media at various different points through history. What I'm most excited for is the look at modern witchcraft, because a lot of these books kind of leave off at like the Victorian period, and I want it right up till now, which this does. It promises the place of witchcraft where I sit, which is like people practicing their craft on Instagram and selling grimoires on Etsy and things like that, and I'm very excited. And then I have this tome. There's no way, I'm telling you right now, there's absolutely no way I'm gonna manage to start and finish that in this month, so I'll probably be carrying this over to February if I get to it. But it is To Paradise by Hanya Yanagihara, which of course is the newest novel from the author of A Little Life, the most controversial booktube book to ever booktube. I have a strong feeling that A Little Life is going to be a one-time hit for Hanya Yanagihara for me, but I'm trying to keep an open mind about this one, despite the fact that early reviews for it say that it is extremely frustrating in a few places and very confusing, and I don't know if I am up for, let me see, 701 pages of very confusing literary fiction in my life, but we are going to give it a try and find out. Well, that was an entire experience. We are back, my friends. We are on the TBR wagon. As always, if you have read any of the books that are on my TBR for this month and you have thoughts about them, please leave them down below. And if there are any books on this TBR that you think remind you of something else that I might like, please leave those recommendations. Please do. Also, if you are taking part, let me know what your TBR is for these prompts. What lyrics inspired what books for you? And of course, as always, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button. It helps a whole lot. And if you're new here, consider subscribing so that you can be here next month for next month's crazy prompts. Don't know why I'm doing this to myself, but here we are. And I will speak to all of you very soon, guys. Bye! Finished it before you got dark. What have you got to say to that?